Hello everyone, good evening, welcome and thank you for joining this evening. My name is Claire and I'm also known as the Ayurveda coach here on Instagram. And today I'm going to be talking about two different things. First of all, I'm going to be talking about your Agni, your digestive fire, and the importance in Ayurveda of looking after our digestive fire. And I'm also going to give you a few little tips about looking after yourself as we enter into Pitta season now, particularly if you're trying to manage certain symptoms such as hay fever and that sort of thing as we enter into Pitta season. And then if you're still with me by the end, I hope you all will be, I thought maybe we could just take a few moments together to just collectively just breathe for a little while and to sort of join together in consciousness and think of others around the world at the moment who are going through very difficult times. I just thought it'd be nice just at the end to sort of join together and just spend a few moments thinking of that. But let's get started. About your Agni and your digestive fire and just how important this is in Ayurveda. So those of you who follow me know that I love to talk about this subject, and the reason is that when I first began studying Ayurveda, I came across the very famous shloka or verse in the ancient texts which speaks about the Agni and the digestive fire, and it says the root cause of all disorders is an impaired digestive fire, an impaired Agni. And that really struck me because I'd spent a long time trying to understand about the doshas and which one I was and how to balance it and what to do. And then this verse says, but the root cause of all disorders is an impaired digestive fire. And that was it, the light bulb moment. So when I see patients, when I talk to people here on Instagram, this is something that I really try to impart, this knowledge about looking after your digestive fire and just how important that is to make sure it's in balance. Now, so if any disorder that you might have, that's already a sign that the digestive fire, the Agni, is out of balance and that the doshas have become perhaps aggravated and so on. But some early warning signs then that you can look for to determine if your digestive fire is needing some attention are the really obvious things. So it's things like gas, it's things like bloating, indigestion after eating, acid reflux, if you have constipation, if you have very loose stools, if it's particularly smelly. These are all signs that the digestive fire is out of balance and needs looking after. But they're often symptoms that I think a lot of us put up with for a long time. So we take a Gaviscon or we have a peppermint tea or something, and we sort of intuitively we know it's not quite right, but at that point it's not big enough of a deal really for us to stop and do anything about it. But I want you to listen now to your bodies and see what your digestion is telling you, because it's giving you lots of clues, and it really is, in Ayurveda, it really is the key to health, this balanced Agni, this balanced digestive fire. So if you're feeling any of these kind of symptoms, check in, listen, see what's going on, and it's time to perhaps look at your eating patterns first of all. Check in what you're eating, what's upsetting this, what's causing this disruption. And I think a kind of, I can say, Western approach to nutrition is often slightly different to an Ayurvedic approach to nutrition. So, for example, patients will come to see me and they'll say, I eat really, really well. I have my porridge in the mornings and I have my cold juice and then I have my salad with all my seeds and nuts and all of this, and I'm vegan, and I say, great, doing brilliantly, but some of these things are actually very testing for your digestion, your digestive fire, if it's not strong, if it's not already well balanced. So I ask people to stay away from very cold food, so cold and raw food, salads, raw vegetables, too many cold juices, adding ice to your drinks, that sort of thing is actually very difficult for your digestive fire to process. So I want you to imagine this Agni is there as this little flame in the stomach, And it fires itself up when you're hungry, and this is a sign, I'm hungry, give me something to eat. So the worst thing we can do is pour cold drinks on it, or cold raw food that hasn't already been cooked, because the digestion has to work doubly hard. So to keep digestion happy, to keep the Agni balanced, think about warm and nourishing foods. Think about using your culinary herbs and spices. Things like cumin, brilliant for digestion, coriander, fenugreek, cinnamon, cardamom, nutmeg, whatever it is that you fancy. Try and add a little bit more of this into your food, into your cooking, and think about cooking those foods and having them warm and having them cooked. It doesn't mean you can't ever have a salad ever again. You know, things like rocket and spinach, those kind of leaves that tend to be okay because they have a bitter taste as well, which helps to add further balance. And you know, in the summertime now, we can cook our vegetables, we can stir fry our vegetables and have those cooled in a salad or with some grains and rice, that sort of thing. So it's not that you have to live on curry or hot soups or that sort of thing, but I want you to think more about, how will this little flame in my stomach, how will it cope with processing this food? And the better the digestive fire is working, the more nourishment we get to our tissues and our body, and the less armour or toxins we create. And that's ultimately the goal. This is the balance. We want nourishment for the body and for the mind. We want minimal toxins, and we want to go to the toilet nicely every morning. And that's it. That is that is a balanced Agni. So as well as sort of taking on board those things in terms of food and drink, you know, regular meal times or having, you know, a bit of a pattern to meal times is also helpful. Listening to that hunger. I've been known to do this as well in the past. Sometimes the hunger comes, and instead of listening and eating something, maybe we have a coffee, we have a glass of water to try and dampen it down. And again, the word dampen, so that the fire is there, it's saying, feed me, give me some fuel. We pour something on it that's no good, and it damages the digestive fire. So next time we do need it to get working, it's impaired and it's not working as nicely. So listen to your hunger. Warm cooked foods, not too many icy drinks or cold drinks. Try and have room temperature drinks, and a little tried and tested home remedy for you to take away with you today, which is really effective actually and so simple, is cumin and honey. So the way you can prepare this is to take a handful of whole cumin seeds and lightly toast them in a dry frying pan just for about 60 seconds until they're nice and fragrant. Take them off the heat, grind them up in a coffee grinder or grind them down with a pestle and mortar. And you've got this toasted cumin powder then, so you can keep that in a jar in a Tupperware box in the kitchen. And before your meals, you take a teaspoon of the cumin powder and half a teaspoon of runny honey. Mix that together and eat it off the spoon or roll it into a little ball, and that will immediately really help to balance the digestive fire. So whether it's too high, Tikshana Agni, or Manda Agni, if it's too low, the cumin and honey remedies is really nice for everyone to try and benefit from. So I'd encourage you to do that, and make it a regular part of something you do before your lunch and dinner. And you can give this to children as well, so anyone over the age of 1 and above. They can have a smaller amount, perhaps half a teaspoon of the powder and a bit more honey to help it go down, and this will help to balance the Agni. I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to move on now and talk a little bit about Pitta season, because it is upon us. We have some lovely hot weather and it's gorgeous, and I think we're all ready for it. So we're moving out of the cold, wet, heavy Kapha season, and we enter into Pitta. But and you know, Pitta is light and sharp and hot and oily. So if you are already, if you already think you have quite a lot of Pitta in you, a bit of a connection there, then entering this time you need to be even a bit more careful, because like increases like in Ayurveda. So we want to do everything we can to try and keep cool, keep Pitta in balance, and make sure that it doesn't we don't get too hot and bothered and too overheated. So Pitta is the dosha of fire and water, but fire being the stronger one, it tends to dominate. So people often we'll see this in certain symptoms. It can be as simple as being a bit more irritable when the Pitta is a bit high. We can, flash up, have an angry burst, be a bit more emotional in that way, a bit fiery. Pitta can manifest in disorders such as skin disorders. So I know a lot of people, maybe they get hives this time of year, their eczema will flare up, psoriasis, rosacea, all these kind of sort of red and inflammatory conditions in the body. And there are lots of things you can do to sort of prepare for this and to make sure that your Pitta stays calm and pacified. So the first thing is, of course, to look after your digestive fire, as we've just spoken about. Make sure that Agni is in balance. Maybe try the cumin and honey a couple of days a week to keep that ticking over nicely. And then there are key foods in Ayurveda that are particularly heating that will cause problems this time of year for Pitta people. And those are tomatoes, chilies, so anything too spicy and hot with the chili, red meat, red wine, hard cheeses. And, occasionally we have to be a little bit careful of certain root vegetables, things like beetroot particularly, and carrots, where they spiral into the ground and they take a lot of heat up from the earth. And they retain that heat and we eat them. And in Pitta time of year, if we're also very Pitta people, as I think a lot of us are here in the West, it can cause too much heat in the body. So those are the kind of key foods to try and keep away from. And taste is very, very important for balancing Pitta. So Pitta is aggravated by 3 tastes, which are sour, salty and pungent. So salty, I think everyone knows what salty tastes like. Sour foods, so think about the taste that you get from things like grapefruit, tomatoes, lemons, vinegar, anything fermented. That's your sour tastes. And pungent foods, so onion, garlic, radishes, cayenne, paprika. So these foods, these tastes, salty, sour and pungent, if you have them in too much in excess this time of year, they're going to aggravate the Pitta. So you want to go to the other 3 tastes in Ayurveda, which are bitter, astringent and sweet. Now, for some of us, that means we go for coffee bitter, wine astringent and chocolate sweet. And I know that is that's the nice easy fallback, but there are better choices for the bitter, astringent and sweet. So bitter, we get this from our bitter greens. So dandelions, rocket, watercress, kale, those kind of bitter green leaves are really good. Also some of your spices, fenugreek, cumin, saffron, turmeric, really nice for the bitter taste. So try and include a little bit of those in your cooking. Astringent tastes then, so if we don't want to reach for a glass of wine, which might not be the best thing. Astringent as well, people struggle with what is astringent, and it's that kind of chalky tannin sort of taste in your mouth, and you get it in pomegranates, chickpeas, apples, most beans and legumes are astringent, things like cranberries. So really simple thing, you could scatter some pomegranates over the top of your dish before you eat, and there you've got your astringent taste to help keep you in balance. And finally, sweet taste. We all like sweet taste. We all know how to get it. But some healthier options, of course, would be, again, in culinary spices. So things like cinnamon and cardamom, some dates, rice, wheat, figs. They're all giving a sweet taste as well. And coconut is very nice. Coconut's really lovely and cooling, actually, for Pitta in the summer. So we balance through reducing Pitta aggravating foods, as I just said. We look after the tastes. We think about those 3 tastes that pacify Pitta, and we try not to have too much of the tastes that aggravate Pitta. But what about if we're still feeling a little bit too much heat in our bodies? So I talked about some of the skin conditions. I find that people tend to have more urinary tract infections, more thrush, that kind of thing, those kind of heat aggravated conditions this time of year. And there's a beautiful, simple home remedy again that you can all do to really cool things down. And it's using this time coriander seeds. So the whole coriander seeds, really beautifully cooling. And very simple. Take 3 teaspoons of the whole seeds, give them a little bit of a bash. We don't need to grind them up, just bash them up a little bit. Put them in a glass of cold water and leave it overnight. And in the morning you strain this and drink the water, and it's really delicious, very refreshing, very, very cooling. So if you think you've got an excess of Pitta, or if you're struggling in the heat this time of year, then the cool coriander water is going to be your best friend. So I can't recommend that enough. Just a little a side note about hay fever, because I think this time of year everyone's hay fever symptoms are really flaring up. So we're coming out of Kapha season, where the mucus has probably built up quite a lot, and we're entering Pitta. So the Kapha mucus kind of starts to melt, Pitta comes, we get more inflammation, and we're sneezing, watery eyes, scratchy throat, all that kind of thing. And I think, the easiest thing that we reach for is the antihistamine, because it's quick and it's effective. So antihistamine inhibits the effects of histamine in our bodies, and histamine is a chemical that's released as the body's inflammatory response. So that's how it works. But obviously taking antihistamine, it's a chemical, and it has side effects. It has to be processed by the liver and everything else in the body. So people are naturally looking for an alternative way, a natural way to deal with hay fever symptoms this time of year. And I think the key there is that we release the histamine as an inflammatory response. So inflammatory is the thing. Pitta is inflammatory. It's heat, it's acidity, it's those things happening in the body. So although Pitta and Kapha dosha are involved with hay fever, if we reduce Pitta in the body by avoiding those kind of foods I talked about at the beginning, by maybe having the coriander water to cool, by balancing our Agni with our cumin and honey before meals, we can reduce Pitta in the body. And then we're having less inflammation. And then when the pollen enters and comes into the body, there's no response. We don't have to fight. We don't have to get worked up. Pitta stays calm because it's balanced, and the symptoms hopefully are reduced or completely gone. So think about that. If you know someone who suffers with hay fever or those kind of things at this time of year, then it's really worth looking at diet and looking at how you can reduce Pitta naturally in the body that way. I've talked quite a lot, and I wondered if anyone on here had any questions. I saw there was something about having ghee on an empty stomach. What about ghee on an empty stomach? I don't know if I'd just eat ghee completely on its own on an empty stomach. I'd probably, again, maybe have it with a pinch of the cumin powder. Ghee is very nice in cooking. It's very good in a little bit of warm milk at bedtime if you need calming, because it's unctuous and it helps to calm Vata. So often before bed we have more Vata energy, and it's kind of a little hurricane in our heads, and we need to bring that down. And so having a little bit of warm milk with a bit of organic ghee in at bedtime is very nice. Mostly we use ghee as the vehicle for getting herbs or Ayurvedic medicines into the body. So yes, it's very beneficial, but I don't think you need to just sort of take spoonfuls of it on a spoon. Thank you for that question. What's the best way to cleanse our guts? Thank you, Geeta. I think it's here we go back to talking about Agni again and the digestive fire. So I think if your digestive fire is working well, then naturally the toxins and the armour that are produced from foods that we eat are taken care of. They're taken out the body, and we have a poo in the morning. So I'm not a massive believer of doing any kind of very intense detox, sort of juice detox or lemon water cleanse. I think that we have all the necessary equipment in our body. It's a very sophisticated engine, as long as we look after digestive fire. So as long as we're looking after that, as long as we're eating the right kind of foods that it can handle, and we're not overloading it with food or not giving it enough food, then it works very nicely to make sure that the gut, stays healthy and stays well. You can, Triphala is a nice Ayurvedic herb that's easy to source, good quality Triphala, which is very good for balancing all three doshas and good for gut health in general. So if you wanted to try having some Triphala at bedtime, then I think that would be helpful. Bittu, how do you satisfy a raging sweet tooth? Asking for a friend. It's not for me. Sure. So I usually, a sweet tooth I usually find is aggravated pitta. I think if pitta is very, very high in the body, then it wants that sweet taste to help pacify and calm it down. So I would ask your friend to look more closely at, are they showing a lot of pitta aggravated symptoms? And maybe they could contact a practitioner or someone to sort of find out more about that, because I find that once we start to balance the pitta, those strong cravings for something sweet go away. And it's normal to have cravings from time to time. It's our body's way of saying we need a bit of this, we need a bit of that. This dosha's out of balance, help me calm it. But if the craving continues after you give it a little bit of that taste, or if it's it feels very strong, then it's a sure sign of an imbalance. So it's time to look at the doshas and if one of them is out of balance. And pitta is usually the suspect. And Anita has just mentioned that Maoli offer triphala, of course. So that's where you can get your triphala from, folks. And I personally recommend having it at night time. It helps to go to the toilet the next morning. And yes, so I hope that helps. And someone else was asking, Pitta answered your question. Is turmeric too heating for pitta? Turmeric, it's a good point. We should talk about turmeric because it's very trendy right now. It's important to use just a small amount of turmeric. So speaking to one of the doctors at the clinic where I trained, and she'd been to visit her mother in Sri Lanka. It was a few months ago before lockdown, and they were sort of laughing because they said, I hear that in England everyone takes, tablespoons of turmeric powder and capsules and everything else. And why do they do that? And and they think we're all nuts. Because turmeric really, it should be used in cooking. So you use it when you're making dal, lentils, or with vegetables. And, half a teaspoon usually is enough. That's all you need. But the important thing is that turmeric shouldn't really be used alone. So it needs to be paired with something unctuous. So some ghee, some coconut milk, to balance those, as you say, to balance those qualities of turmeric. So we have turmeric, it's dry like vata, it's a little bit heating like pitta, but when we add something like ghee or coconut milk when we're cooking it and using it, then there's the kapha element, and it becomes the kind of, tridoshic, perfectly balanced way to then enjoy the anti-inflammatory benefits of turmeric. So yes, take care with your turmeric, and that's how useful it is. It's wonderful. Answer so well. Nothing in excess. Thank you, Anita. Yes. Guys, thank you everyone who's stuck it out this evening and listened to me talking. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for all your questions and for taking time to tune in. I said at the beginning, I just wanted to, if we could collectively just join together now at the end and just really take a few moments to just stop and think and breathe and meditate together and send some love out into the world to our fellow human beings, all those who are in fear, all of those who are angry, all of those who are deeply hurt and upset. So if everyone wants to do that, I'm not really going to talk. I just thought we could just take a few moments just to take a few breaths together and just think on that. Thank you so much, everyone, and I think So as we raise our consciousness together and we send that love out into the world and those vibrations, it can really, I do believe it's a powerful way of reaching people and of coming together. So thank you very much for your time. I've been Claire, the Ayurveda coach, and hope to see some more of you soon. Have a peaceful evening.